Matthew Lehane, Paul Aniello,
Here.
Bassam Amin,
Here.
Chris Clark. He's online. I see him.
I'm here.
Good morning, Chris.
Kathy Coffey. Here. Adam Derrick.
Here.
Melody Fowler.
Here.
Amy Garbarini.
Here.
Kate Gibson.
Here.
Leon Hughes. Daniel Koenig. Cassie Lord.
Here.
Will Montgomery.
Here.
Philip Perella.
Here.
Rodney White.
Here.
All right, and we have
Thank you. So that brings us to our next agenda. We have to nominate a new FY 26 chair. Are there any nominations from the city?
Yes. FAMPO.
Okay. Any discussion? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Dr. Noverteaser.
Perfect. Good morning, everybody. All right, number 4, approval of the April 6th TAC agenda. Do we have any edits to the agenda?
I would like to do 2 amendment change the agenda for the APC centers to furniture centers and our maintenance feedback. We had extra money and moving that to our central.
All right, perfect. We'll add those as 7E and 7F. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. I guess before we get any further, good morning. I'm Bailey Thompson. I've worked at the city for almost 5 years now. I'll be stepping up into the role that Josh Crump left as the senior planner with the city. So excited to join you all. All right, number 5, public comments.
Welcome from all of us.
Thank you.
Good.
Do we have any members of the public that would like to speak today? All right. 6A, approval of the March 2nd Technical Advisory Committee meeting minutes. Any edits to the minutes?
Motion to approve. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Chair, for the tip amendments, I suggest that we take all together, but if questions about individual ones, it's fine for them to raise those questions now. We can just deal with them and then approve them all at once, as you like.
Right. Is there any tip amendments anyone wants to pull out and talk about individually?
At least look at the 2 that we're adding.
Sure.
A handful.
If we can ask, but if we go just to explain.
Sure. So for the first one, we had a grant for, it was for automatic passenger counters. And we won't be able to use that. If the funding was for 320,000, we would not be able to use that money until after we got our intelligent transit system. So that money was going to lapse. So instead, we are moving that money, that 320, into furniture and fixtures for operations and maintenance facilities. So that's just a switch of the funds so that they go. The other one, when we did the maintenance HVAC out at our maintenance facility, we actually had $64,000 remaining. Again, instead of having that money go back to the federal government, we are just switching that money to our new HVAC that we need to get done at Central. If anyone has any additional questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Sure. I actually had a question on a different tip
Sure.
amendment if there's nothing else in quick ones. This question is for VDOT, basically on 7D, a resolution. For CC 105-464 for the West Montavon Road reconstruction. My question is, what's the purpose of this amendment at this time? Because the project is completed, it's just kind of in financial closeout.
It's still an active project in terms of in our SIP. So as long as it's in our SIP, it has to be in the tip.
Okay. So was the action just to like add it to the tip because it wasn't in the tip before?
I think it was in there, it was, because I remember with the right of way phase, we had to get, an amendment prior to, so I think. As the project is moving, toward closeout, the financials will change a little bit, I think we do still have some outstanding right of way. That we're working on, so I mean, there still could be actions that are happening because of changes to the dollar amount.
You wanna go to the tip block of D? So usually they have an explanation there.
Yeah, so it has some on. The financial piece of it in there in the program note. So it's releasing some. SCDG on the PPD, it's adding some on the revenue share or the right of way phase rather, from revenue sharing. And then, on the construction phase as well, so I think it's as we're able to close out pieces and parts of it, it's trying to, clean up any of your bits of it.
Okay. Thank you. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
The tip agenda.
Sorry, the tip amendments and modifications agenda. Sorry.
And I'll second it.
All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion passes.
Chairman, if I may just make a side comment for the action items. There is a lot in this agenda. We know that. This is always a very busy time of the year because it's the budget cycle and you have to do all your business plans and you have to prepare everything together with us having to write the tip and us working on the LRTP. So we know that this is a heavy agenda. The page doesn't look long, but there's a lot. It is 227 pages. So I will ask the FAMPO staff to go through the presentations as smoothly and quickly as possible. We will not hold on and wait for you, but when you have questions, please do raise them, because I'm just thinking of the time this meeting might take. We can have an hour discussion on any item you wish, but I'm just suggesting to the FAMPO staff that we do it as quickly as possible and leave it to the members to stop and ask questions. In most of these cases, the action is either to do public comment or there's no action really. So there's nothing that we really are approving today. So you will be able to come back to us next week and say, oh, I didn't realize there was this thing, explain it. We're very happy for the coming weeks for you to email us additional questions on these items. In most cases, not being approved today. But it is a lot to get you're aware of that.
All right, with that, let's get started. We have 8A endorsing resolution 2648, directing a public comment period for the draft fiscal year 2027 Unified Planning Work Program.
Next slide. All of y'all know what the UPW is. We have these introductory slides on, let's go to the next slide. And the next slide. And the next slide. Accomplishments were on the prior slide. In the new projects in the FY27 are summarized as follows. We're going to adopt the 2025 LRTP, including the updated extreme long range plan and congestion management program. We're going to manage the. We did receive the draft agreement for the 3 road safety audits for the Safe Streets and Roads for All FY24 in Spotsylvania counties. We'll be managing that. Subject to the Bill Grant Award, we will manage the river crossing tiered NEPA study, potentially manage the FXBGO high capacity transit study, manage the Spotsylvania Town Center connector traffic analysis study, and manage studies directed by the policy committee, such as those provided through our survey of focus areas for staff efforts. That concludes my presentation.
That was quick.
Mr. Chair, Can you speak a little bit about just the fourth bullet and the fifth bullet, those two study efforts?
So, FXB Goes asked us to whether we would be prepared to manage the study, which is funded in FY25, John, I think it is, to do a high capacity transit study. It was applied for way back then. It's been in the CMAC STGB spreadsheet for all those years since it was first approved. So it's not a new project. It's just that FXPO asked us whether we would be prepared to manage the study. And we said we could potentially do that, providing we jump through all the technical and legal routes to be able to do that. So that's why we put there potentially. It's still got to be confirmed. We have asked for information from VDOT about the legal and accounting methods to access the funds. FXBGO still has to draw up a scope of what they want out of the study. So all of that's in process, but we're putting it in the UPWP so we don't have to come back and do an amendment later. So it's a potential project. It will become an actual project if all those hoops prove to be, don't prove any obstacles. The next one is this Spotsylvania Town Center connector. It's extending that mall court, that little nub of a road, into the mall roadway system that was discussed with the policy committee. I think the chair of the policy committee came up with the project this time round. And we were asked to just do a traffic analysis, like micro simulation of what the impacts would be if we did punch through in one or other way, because VDOT had concerns about the impacts on the on and off ramps to I-95 and the traffic flow down Route 3 if we just connect this road without doing further work on analyzing this traffic. We might potentially create an additional problem. So the idea there is it's a very inexpensive, it's like $32,000 or $33,000 to just get all the modeling work done to see whether it's feasible. So effectively, it's a very tiny study just to check the feasibility of actually doing it. If we can't find a combination of lanes and turn lanes and all that that actually works, doesn't wreck the traffic, we would probably not proceed any further. So this is to establish whether it can actually happen. And the policy committee on that particular one said to us that we must. You remember they had a discussion about the bike counters and they approved putting that into the funding, but they said with the town center connector, we should prepare two options of the CMAC list, one with the study and one without the study, because they hadn't made a final decision. They were sort of unsure if they wanted to spend the money, and they wanted to first know how much STBG and CMAC money we were going to get before they approved the study. So we put it in again. As you know, the UPWP gives permission to do a project, but it doesn't require you to feel that it's a special project. So those two are there as potential. We would first need all of the boxes to be checked before they became an actual project. But we don't do anything in secret. We put it up in the system.
Yeah, so the second one, so that's the study to look at kind of potentially extending Carl D. Silver down to the Mall Ring Road.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. It's called Mall. It's called the Mall Court.
Right.
Mall Court. Yeah.
I thought Capero did a lot of study on this and layout, and they discussed it with VDOT. And it requires a lot of right of way, especially where that restaurant is. It used to be Burger King, I think.
So they are.
And the left turn also from Route 3. It was an issue to add another left turn, I believe. But do you all have access to that study?
I don't know about that study, but VDOT has these pipeline studies that have twice looked at that intersection, but it was part of a bigger study that did the whole corridor.
Route 3.
So some work was done on that intersection. One proposal out of one of those two studies recommended a raised grade separated concrete flyover to put and at that stage, nobody felt like that should become a smart scale project, so we didn't take it any further. The chairman thinks that we should investigate whether it's feasible to put the punch through. But currently, if you limit it to 2 lanes, the 2 lanes already exist past that restaurant. So if you made it 4 lanes, you would need to acquire land, but if you only have the existing 2 lanes continue through, you wouldn't need to remove the restaurant. It could continue now.
That study was based on high-rise building at that corner of you.
If you could send us the detail about where to find the study or the reference, the name of the study, we'll go find it.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll certainly have a look. It's not driven by FAMPO staff, that particular one. That's raised by the chair of the policy committee, and the policy committee were in agreement that we should consider doing it, but they wanted to make a final study when they saw the CMAQ and STGB allocations.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, and it looks like we are directing a public comment period for this. We have
One last comment before you vote. Sorry, Chair. The dollar values in the draft are going to have to change. When we published the draft, we didn't have the DRPT numbers. They came in at midnight on Friday. So we now finally have the numbers. So we will have to edit the financials. They're not exactly accurate. So we will put the amended figures in once we have it. Sorry.
perfect. Do we have a motion to endorse resolution 26-48?
A motion to approve.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we'll have the 8B endorsed resolution 26-50, directing a public comment period for draft FY 27 to 30 transportation improvement program.
Very quickly, the Transportation Improvement Program is the document that outlines the next 4 years of transportation spending in our region for all regional projects. During this, what we're going to be doing is going forward with public comment. We can scroll down. We've got a draft document that is ready to go. We've gotten our input from DOT and DRPT, as well as our local and regional transportation providers. This is a lot of it. Is the standard boxes that you see with your tip amendments, but this is everything all together. It won't come online until October at the earliest, but probably the biggest and newest item in this is that with our transportation improvement program, we also have to do a analysis of kind of benefits and burdens for the region. So the newest part outside of the project information is actually at the lowest item, where we've actually used updated census information to identify where new projects are coming in, both the benefits and burdens, depending on what types they are and where they are. FAMPO staff did not find any specific burdens. Actually, pause this right here, or any direct things that we can say that this is burdening any specific community, but we do want to at least pull attention to the population under 18. If there's any group that could potentially have a future burden, we're kind of watching this one because we actually notice that there are more projects of burden in areas that have a higher percentage of those under 18. FAMPO staff does not believe that it's to the point that there is an undue burden here, but there's something that we are going to actually be watching moving forward as tip amendments come in to make sure that we're not adding on to that. But otherwise, for those over 65, there's very limited to no real risk there. We're looking at communities of color, low income, the disabled population, and those without a vehicle. We're actually fairly confident that we're not providing an undue burden, but that's the newest analysis in the document. It's traditionally done alongside the LRTP, but our tip is 1 year in front of the LRTP. So that's where we are, and we're asking for public comment. And if you notice anything, send me an email, and I'm more than happy to look into it and update it because we are moving forward with this.
One day when I get really famous and you all elect me to Congress, I'm going to make sure that those 3 programs all follow the same timeline. The TIP, the the LRTP and the CLRP, which currently have totally different cycles, right? The CLRP is 4 years, the LRTP is 5 years, the TIP is 3 years. Ridiculous. Just do them all at once, done, because they all interlock, and you got to make sure the detail is the same. It's just daft. Anyway, sorry, I'm making the meeting longer. Sure.
We have any comments? Alright, be looking for a motion to endorse resolution 26-50.
Motion to approve resolution 2650.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, 8C CLRP prioritization methodology.
Yes, so putting the cart before the horse, which is good for mid-engine vehicles. Not thing. Let's talk about the constrained long range plans methodology. So this is the program that is looking out to 2055 to identify all of our regionally significant projects and creating a fiscally constrained document of saying, this is generally how we're going to spend our money. Next slide. Right now in our timeline, we're in the process of creating a simple and flexible methodology. We've actually taken some of the feedback within the LRTP survey. We've actually had a quick discussion with the Citizens Transportation Advisory Committee, listening to some of their items. Right now, I want this table to discuss some of the methodology. We don't have to approve it today, which is the good part, but we do need to approve in May so that we can get a call for projects out. We do have a very hard deadline of November this year. So we're literally approving the tip first, which is how we're spending money. This is saying we're going to improve our budget after we spend the money, and then we're going to have our long range plan that comes the next year. So it is really horse before the cart. Next slide. So with this regional plan, kind of the important thing that we're thinking about moving forward is that we're going to be looking much more towards big projects. Not necessarily saying that small projects don't exist, but our current CLRP includes 336 projects. That is a good 60 more than Richmond, which has a lot more jurisdictions, and it tends to be much larger than other things. We kind of threw everything in we could to make sure that it passed the air quality conformity constraints. Next slide. So for this process, I'm doing something very simple. To screen, score, win. So basically, we're going to screen for the regionally significant projects, and I'll go through that in a little bit. Then we're going to score those projects, and of course, then we all win at the end. Next slide.
You used the wrong team.
You know, finding screens is hard too. I had to do this last week. So I do have my Mary Washington socks, and my kids were at the game. So, yes. So in any case, we're going to be screening. So there's a lot of different quasi-gray area definitions for regionally significant federal highways. The Virginia MPO level has their own. So of course, here's where we don't have to worry as much. So if it's recently, if it has to be included in air quality, we luckily don't have to do this. So it's a lot easier of a process. VDOT, Transportation Mobility Planning Division, has its like major road findings, new intersections, new locations. So I'm kind of been leaning a little bit more into that definition, but I can work with whatever y'all kind of feel is most appropriate. And even if it isn't, say, screened by, say, staff as regionally significant, we're still coming back to the TAC. So if you would say, no, I think your view of regionally significant, this needs to be added on, we can still come back and have that and bring y'all's input back into it. Next slide. So the other thing we're doing, so now we're working it, we're starting to say, okay, where does our budgeting need to go? So we're looking at that if it's in our tip, that document that we just said, it's already meant at the end. Those project funds are allocated, they're good to go. Then really what we're looking into is the midterm and out years. So we're trying to figure out what's our midterm funds. So it's a 10-year span outside the first 6 years. And then the out year, which gets a lot fuzzier. Chances are things might move in between those two. So I don't want to necessarily always have that as a hard view, but that's just kind of how we're putting it together. Then we always have the needs list, and things can move from the needs list into the CLRP and vice versa. So there's a lot of mobility there, particularly now that we don't have the air quality conformity. So I've always used 40-30-30 as kind of looking at to say, okay, we got the 3 years. Now let's start talking about the 3 project types. And so we're looking at things that add big capacity and connections, capacity or connections, and then the local priorities. Next slide. So I want to use a cascading formula again and discuss how big you want those funding pies to be, or the pots. But keep in mind, the big projects in and of themselves, if we're talking about 1.6, $2 billion, they're going to be 200 million. So this might be only a handful of projects, but that's typically how our constrained long range plan works. So we want to go basically say, is it adding capacity connections? Yes, screen it or not. Then we're going to give you all the choice of, let's just say if a big project is a local jurisdiction's number one priority. It doesn't score quite well because this is going to be completely bad. We're going to bring it back to the table and say, okay, do you want to kind of drop it into the next funding pot and see how other projects show up? And we're going to work our way down as we go through there until we kind of budget out all the funds up to 2025. Next slide.
John, just hold on 1 second. Just to remind everybody that this is not actual money. This is potential money. There is no actual money. The CLRP talks about where we hope to spend money in the future and the money we hope to receive from all the different places that we get funding from. So it's not allocating any money, it's allocating potential future money. We still have to go find all that money. We don't actually have it, right? That's what a CLRP is. It's like the plan for the future about where we hope to spend the money.
Yeah, screening the score. So we're working in. So if it's a TIPS, smart scale project, it moves in. Funding's there, it's already there. We count it, we move on. And then we start looking at the midterms, and we're going to screen. And then if it's scored, we can move forward. And of course, what we really want is the TAC to basically the interface between those levels. Anytime we move projects up and down or in and out, that's something that should be done at the TAC because that just makes the most sense as far as determining the regional priorities at that point in time. So that's the overall recommendation process compared to the slide last month. We tried to streamline this. Next slide. And then finally, I get into the actually scoring qualify. So actually go back one section. So when we're in this category, depending on the tiers, as it moves down those pies, we want to go from completely data driven to a lot more local input driven. So as it kind of works its way down, we can kind of go through and add kind of more weight on the thumbs of the scales based on kind of like what the local priorities are, so that, you know, it's not completely penalizing projects that didn't score well, but still might be a local priority. We still have the three added. So next slide. So highway and connectivity. What we're looking here is basically to keep things simple. Depending on what is available through modeling in our timeline, which is kind of another constraint, we're basically looking to say, what's the volume to capacity ratio? How many people can this corridor move? Is it intersecting with a management corridor? So we're kind of keeping it very simple. I think everybody should be able to pull up, say, P per P or whatnot, and basically recreate the scores in real time, very simply. Maybe not for everything at, you know, all at once, but for each individual project, it should be able to be replicated and very simple to school. So we're focusing on connectivity for this, and as you can see, it has a very high points in scoring available. So next slide. We're doing the same thing for transit and active projects. It's a little bit different. We're keeping the same structure for roadways, active and transit, but we're actually tweaking kind of how the scoring is done just to make it more applicable for the mode and the data available for that. So again, connectivity is looking at CMP corridors. Data is looking at actual projects, and we're looking to start looking at some expected increase in capacity for some of our active corridors as well. Next slide. Highway capacity, again, we're using levels of service, volumes to capacity ratio, the number of users expected during P and peak. So we're looking at projects that are connecting points, as well as projects that are adding capacity along those areas. So, so for that transformative, it has to have both. Or if it's kind of that regional impact, it can pull from either, but it's probably going to get a 0 in one of those categories because it won't apply. But again, it's building down the scoring items. So we would like to model some of these outcomes if that is possible We're gonna have to work with the odds modelers. We don't know if that's going to be 100% possible with the constrained time crunch. So we're trying to build that into our methodology of having a little bit more flexibility as far as what is available at this. Next slide. Transit, again, we're doing the same thing. It's capacity. We're looking to screen and score based on that using metrics that best fit the mode. Next slide. And then we're looking at safety and value as well. So we're looking at the primary benefits, the crash modification factors, and we're looking at basically what's the cost per individual that can be moved by that. And it actually slightly weighted so that near-term projects get a little higher multiplier score than projects in the out year, because we know that there's more risk in the dollar amounts out to 2055 based on inflation and other things. So it drops the score as it goes further out into the future. Next slide. And then transit activities are on basically the same item. The one difference is that because there's not necessarily kind of modification factors for transit treatments, generally speaking, because transit is generally safer than an automobile trip based on the number of trips. It basically, we're looking again at counting, okay, how many vehicle trips are replaced by that transit trip. Next slide. And then finally, here's the big one. Okay, not the big one, but this is a more interesting one. We were thinking about giving every single jurisdiction 25 points per mode project, which you can just basically spend those points on any project you want. So you determine what the priorities are within your jurisdictions, and you can spend 10 points per project. So say 5, 5, or 10, 10, and 5 on 3 projects. You can split it 5 times across 5 months across 5 projects. You can spin it up to 25 projects and 1 point gets each. But it allows you to spend points on priorities, so that all of a sudden this becomes a kind of score-based way of receiving input. But it's basically your ability to kind of bump projects that are your jurisdiction's priorities moving forward as far as making sure that they are in the CRFP. So it's done publicly, and it's just say, here's 3 points, spend them as you want. So next slide. If you want an example of how it is, I actually pulled some projects from our previous thing and ran a raw score thing. And I just want to say what it does is you see projects here that say are just outside of the criteria. I just cut it off at 12 and how it moves up. So any project that is kind of on that cusp, in or out, that's a priority, can kind of get bumped up. If it's a project that's struggling for it, it might not move all the way up, but it kind of gets a little bit closer. And then we're still going to have the TAC to say, come back and say, do we want to cascade the projects out? Like to use this one with Pennsylvania, say this is one of their priorities. They have another high scoring. Do they want to do the swap at that point in time? Do they want to cascade it down? But as you can see, Pennsylvania's big priority gets bumped up into the cutoff tiers. That's kind of what the local priorities do. It's kind of elevates a few projects just to make sure that if they're on that cusp, it's a lot easier rather than us kind of battling it out around the table because we have 2 projects that are just outside and we have to figure out a way to add them back too. So it's just kind of a process that can be done to take that into consideration while also providing this. Next slide. So again, just a reminder, we need to will be adopted in this December, and so we will kind of go through this process. It's very much a condensed process, but again, we can still come back to this list basically yearly, even a little bit more, to swap projects in and out. Now that we're not doing air quality conformity, it's not the battle royale that takes place every couple of years, just to make sure we get all the projects in so we don't have to go back and do the air quality conformity. So, of course, the policy committee might be able to want to switch projects as they wish, which is within their purview. So
just my comment on this. John has worked on this whole methodology, and kudos for the hours he spent on it. That last slide is really my push. So that's the only part that I personally have pushed hard for, which is this. The point is, because cost estimates are going up at a rate that is eye-watering, we're going to be squashed in terms of the fiscal space and how many projects we can actually get into the CLRP. So I would like to rely heavily on this two-tiered process where we have the CLRP is the ones that we absolutely know will fit into the trained finances, but we make use of the needs list where we park everything else. There's no specific limit on a needs list. So we take projects that somewhere along the line, we're going to have to draw a line and say, okay, up to these projects are probably affordable. Everything below that line that people feel is really important, we put in the needs list. So it doesn't disappear. It's still in the long range plan, but it's not in the constrained plan. And then this process gives us once a year the chance to say, oh, we've got some funding on this particular project. It might not be all the funding, but we've got some of the funding. Let's now move it into the CLRP. And so we can have the swapping between the needs list and the CLRP at least once a year because we don't have to do conformity anymore. So it makes it real easy. You just need 30 days public comment and a vote by the policy committee, and you all will make the recommendation of a project that you think needs to be moved into the CLRP. So I'm not as worried as in the past about projects that don't make that cut, that final line. We will put them into the needs list so they're still available. And as soon as we get a little funding or there's a strong push by the policy committee to move it into the CLRP, we can. But it's really no point parking projects in the CLRP if we have no funding on them anyway. They're just a planned project, or sometimes not even planned. Sometimes it's a, what's that word that we use? Anyway, it's a potential project. It doesn't actually have funding on it. So I'm pushing strongly for us to use this as an annual way to update the CLRP. We don't have to wait 5 years. If some funding comes along or there's a strong push for a project, once a year we can do a 30-day public comment and add it. So it's real quick. It's not this big drama to add things to the CLRP. It might need to swap with a project. If we don't have any funding on it, then you've got to remove a project of a similar value, right? So you may have to swap projects. But particularly if it's got funding, like if VRE comes to us and says, we're going to extend a parking lot at a train station, we have the funding. I'm real happy that in the CLRP because it's net neutral. It doesn't change the amount of funding available for the CLRP. Got the money and the project, just shove it in. It's real easy.
Really where this gets in is like in a couple of years when we're looking at those out years, each potential candidate projects for smart scale or other funding sources. That's really when it starts falling in. We would have to make amendments or changes just in case if it's not in the CLRP. But otherwise, we kind of know what our projects are for this first 6 years. And that's something that we just green light straight through and say, okay, let's go.
Chair?
We have any other discussion?
One question, John. So do we know, like, are the state and federal funds projected for the CLRP already going to be a lot lower than they were like last CLRP?
So we don't see the federal funds having a physical drop. What's happening is that the cost of an individual project is going up, real. So we don't see a massive drop in the federal funding coming in, but the number of projects we can now compete with funding is shrinking. VDOT's putting 40% contingencies now on some projects because we actually don't know by the time we get into construction what it's going to cost. So those cost estimates are just going up.
And that's another item is narrowing and focusing is regionalized significant long range plan. When you have 300 plus projects and you apply the cost inflation to all of those versus the smaller pool, even if it's they're small projects, that does pull up. I think that's something when we're looking at our PINA analysis, we looked at other projects that look back at our CLR and cost it was going to take to execute and bring that to completion. You did have dozens and dozens, I mean, pages of projects that were all under $1 million that I would say probably would not screen in or being regionally significant. There's a reason why they were there previous, because they are quality conformity. But that's probably something that we can either keep needs list, or that does not necessarily have to be in the regional constraint long range plan, because the significance of those is probably less significant for that, but it's chewing up that constraint long range plan piggyback, just because it's nickel timing the total amount, and you have to adjust for that. So our thing is let's focus on the big projects, because even with that huge funding, the next 6 years is already going to be consuming a chunk of that. We already know where it's coming from. So it's really kind of figuring out what we're doing in that mid to a lesser extent out future year. Because by the point in time we even get close to those out years, we're going to be this 2-3 times already. So still just a planning process document to organize that. Thank you.
Seeing none, we'll move to item 8D. We have a summary presentation of the LRTP 2025 Transportation Goals and Needs Survey results.
While Gene is getting ready for that, just on any of these items, if you have any additional queries, we know that this is a lot to do in one meeting. So please do email us if you have any queries or questions. We'll happily try and answer those and work with these projects. Eventually they'll come back for a vote, so I prefer to handle any queries before then.
Great. So this is the summary presentation going over the LRTP survey results. First, we're going to take a incredibly high level review of what we've seen in the LRTP survey results, and then we're going to go over how you can access the results and survey data. Next slide. So reviewing the comments that were left in the tell us your thoughts section, these are the broad trends that we're seeing. There's an emphasis on improving communication between transit agencies and the public. There are pessimistic attitudes towards infrastructure improvements due to existing infrastructure, slow progress, and public disinterest. There's an interest in extending the metro down to Fredericksburg and the VRE down to Richmond. We need to promote the FAMPO committees more, as well as feed on report problems. There is a desire for developers to assist in improving surrounding transportation infrastructure, frequent mentions of traffic light timing, and several comments, a million comments even, about Route 1, Route 3, Route 7, 995. Next slide. Going through the comments, there are also specific things that people are asking for, complaining about, giving comments on. Quickly here. Here's an example of maybe 8 or so, but there are so many. Next slide. So now we're going to go through the results of each of the goals and the objectives. There are 7 goals and 55 objectives total. So if you're all okay with it, I'm not going to read out every single one. I'm going to give you all about 10 seconds to skim through each slide. What? Agreement with each of the objectives. Less than that is pretty rare. Next slide. Next slide.
Suggestion is a big deal.
Next slide. Slide. And next slide. These are the goals in order of full agreement. We had I agree, I partially agree, and I disagree. So agrees. Next slide. if we take in the partial agreement, this is what that looks like. We're seeing the same top 4 goals switch around and the same bottom 3 goals switch around, but other than that, not a lot of movement. Next slide. These are the top 10 objectives. These are the 10 objectives that the most people agreed with implementing. Slide. Here we have the bottom 10 objectives. The people that the objectives that people.
Yeah, so they're not particularly phased about these, but the previous slide is the ones they really, really want.
Next slide. So you can have access to the Excel file that all of these results are on through the TAC agenda and through the LRTP page on the FAMPO website. Next slide. We have broken down the survey data into several tabs at the bottom. The first one being survey data. This is the survey data that we've taken. We have removed any references to personal information, so name, email, anything like that. And we have also connected each of the zip codes to the city and council they live in, or city or county that they live in, and applied either FAMPO, FAMPO, GWRC rural, that's going to be Caroline County and King George County, or other in jurisdiction. Next slide. You can see the breakdown of each jurisdiction and the tabs that are correlated with name. We have it for all of 1,073 responses for Fredericksburg, Stafford, Pennsylvania, rural GWRC, and other. Next slide. The information that we have put onto the analysis tabs are taken from the Survey 123 Analyze tool. If these graphics are something you want to see for any other zip code breakdown that we haven't already provided, then email us and we can send that to you. But you can review the comments on the survey data tab, again, filter it by zip, county, jurisdiction, anything else as well. The comments columns are highlighted in blue. Slide. And our next steps are reviewing the comments and survey data, developing the LRTP goals and objectives alongside a survey results report, presenting the goals and objectives at the committee set to endorse and approve. And if you have any questions, I will take them.
So we've literally given you word for word every written comment that was sent. So you can sort them by zip code, by county, by whatever else. And for your own jurisdiction or your own like if VRE wants to look at the ones, by county, they can do it, or zip code, or by whatever else. So we've not restricted it. We've given you everything. We just took out the personal information. The agenda for today has got the Excel file linked to the agenda. So if you click on the agenda today, you should be able to download the whole thing. We'll fix the link, sorry.
Do we have any questions or discussion? All right, hearing none, thank you. Item 8E, FAMPO Complete Streets Plan. Summary of that.
Yeah, thank you all for your feedback. I asked from you last month. I've taken it and began incorporating it into the plan. This is a summary of that feedback, and I'll really sneak peek into progress of the document so far. So here's just a document outline. It's under construction. What I'm going to be focusing on for, again, a kind of higher level summary is of this section 8, which are recommendations that came out of the workshop we had with the TAC. And again, the feedback I received. So these are the bike ped priority corridors we talked about, and they should align with all the feedback I got from you all to be accurate. So yeah, there's 8 corridors. That's what they look like. Just moving on from that, this wasn't necessarily from this round of feedback, but also in the document, I have a catalog of projects across the region for planned shared use paths and planned sidewalks, also on street bicycle. And so you can see there's maps with these and these numbers correspond with tables with more project information there that again I've received from you all. Moving over to public transportation. Kind of in the final stages of feedback, I was getting a lot of specific locations of bus stop improvements, upgrading again from these like Charlie Brown style with the just sign there. So that's exciting. And again, some process with the projects mapped and numbered corresponding with an entry in the table. And I also got some feedback on expanded public transportation service in the region. So working on incorporating that as well. This is just a TAC timeline to the finish line. So next month out of the TAC, I will have a final draft document to give to you all. And I will ask you to submit any final feedback on that document in the next 2 weeks till May 15th. And then we'll bring it back with hopefully all final recommendations from you all incorporated to send out for public comment in June, which the policy committee will open June 15th and set to close July 17th, so that we can hopefully get the plan adopted in August. So that's where we're at. That's kind of some of the feedback I was getting. I'll take any questions.
All right, not hearing any, but definitely looking forward to this as it comes back in May. Item 8F, CMAQ CR STBG funding updates.
Yes, next slide. Real quick, just keep in mind that all of the information you're about to see is still draft allocations. And we were still kind of working to nail down everything, but it was at that. So if there are numbers that do change, because I'm going to start working in them next week, just be aware. Next slide. So in previous rounds, I want to remind everybody that for the process last spring, we had to cut about $2 million from our CMS and STBG funding. As a result, what we ended up doing was not cutting any projects. We just used out-year funds or 2031 year funds to absorb the cost increase. It created a slightly smaller pool. We did have some money come back into the balance entry, but at the same point in time, we're looking at a pretty big cut. So next slide. We have our draft allocations, and the biggest thing that we're really excited about is that we've had an overall increase, both in an expected increase in FY32, but we've actually had small increases across all funding years moving out. So next slide. What that looks like right now for FY31-32 is that we're going to be allocating about $9.9 million to the projects that were submitted. So hooray, and this also includes a little bit of the extra money that was in FY31. So,
John,
yes.
just pause for 1 second. That 9.8 million that we have to allocate now, does that exclude those additional monies in the earlier years?
No, this is only for FY31 and 32.
Okay, that's not, you answered not the question I asked. You answered the opposite of the question I asked. There's 9.8 million.
Yes.
Does that exclude those other totals you've just showed us on the previous slide for FY27, 28, and 30?
Yes.
So we got 9.8 million to allocate plus whatever that number is. One.
Get there, yes.
Okay.
So in our call for projects earlier, or late last year, this is what we're going to be working with for those particular 2 years. Next slide. So What you really want to know is for FY 31 and FY 32, this is our expected allocations for each one of the years, along with our set aside. This CMAC STBG set aside, we're looking at about $500,000. The WRC and FAMPO set aside a little over $340,000. Our transit set aside, the TMA set aside, and then we have the allocations to Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania, and Stafford based on our percentage distribution with the 50-50 split between population and urbanized population. So that is how we are now getting to our $9.9 million. So that's where we're sitting now. Now, within this next week, I'm going to start programming this into the projects that everybody around this table has submitted. And I'll probably be reaching out once I finish that to discuss kind of timing and when you need the funding available. So next slide. So there's more. This is what you need to do. Next slide. We have an additional set of funds, about $1.2 million in previous years. And this is always the tricky part because programming these into projects that are kind of planned, particularly near years, not every single project can use funding right away. Sometimes projects can be accelerated, sometimes they can't, and there's always a bit more balancing and juggling with this set of funds. So that's the reason why I'm going to do FY 31 and 32 first, so we know where all that. And then I'm going to come back and say, all right, how are we going to use these funds and where can we plug it to accelerate the right projects at the right time or park the money because there isn't anything available. And so that's building towards a project that can be completed in those out years. Now note that Ian has noted that the Route 3 Mall Drive modeling is also included. The policy committee is debating that, and they've dedicated about $20,000 to new bike head counters. So that's coming out of this FY 27 funds. So it's about $55,000 to $70,000. If both of these projects are, the Mall Drive is slightly more expensive at that like 26 to 34 plus range. So there's a little bit of wiggle room. So that's where we're estimating. That's why you have about $15,000 range. Both of those may vary. So there we have. Now we're going to have some decisions, but I do want to note that we have some very small pots of funding. If you do it by formula, we might have some weird kind of $600 here, $700 here that might not be as useful, but we can work that out. Next slide. So next up, as I said, we're on program, but I'm taking suggestions of what is the best mechanism to kind of use this fund. One, it is very simple. Just use the adopted formula, program it out, and then it's going to be emails with you all about those small pots of funding and where do I kind of stuff that. I could try to reprogram delayed projects. So knowing we had to delay everything, I'm about $400,000 short. So it would still be some picking which ones win and lose to that, but that is an option. If there's underfunded programs that you just want to say is by formula, stuff the money there. We can't use CMAC, or sorry, we can't use $600 of carbon reduction funds on any one project because that's a weird thing and it has a little requirements to go with it or other recommendations. So that's something I wanted to hear from y'all before I started basically pulling on the spider's web to program this near-term funding because it's not insignificant. It's a good chunk of money, but it does create a lot of dominance moving forward, depending on what you feel is the best way to allocate those funds. So.
John, basically with regards just to the two policy committee projects with this proposal with Plan B, we would be funding this first. We're doing any of this?
Yes.
And remembering that the second one, they didn't vote to definitely fund it. The bike ped ones, they voted to fund. So that's $20,000. The second one, all court connector to the Spotsylvania Town Center, they said they want to make up their mind when they see these numbers. So I'm assuming they will want to fund it, but they may decide no. I don't have a final decision from them. So we're going to make two versions of the table, one with it and one without it, and then they can vote on which one they want to.
So my thought is we should basically fund what the policy committee wants first, then do number one.
I have one wrinkle. Chairman, I'm gonna ask your permission. If you look at the staff reports, the first item there, FAMPO appeal funding. Would you mind if I spoke to that now because it may have an impact on this? So I sent around this sheet, printed sheet. Every year, FAMPO gets funded for their internal administration by basically three funding sources. That's the PL or planning funds, which comes from federal highways. And then a second source of funding, which is Section 5303 funding, which comes via the FTA and via DRPT. So once before I approached the TAC with another funding cut, the TAC decided to give us a small amount of STGB to make up the loss. And then our federal and state bodies brought a revised budget, which gave us back that money. So I then returned it back to the TAC pot of STGB funds. We never actually spent it. We put it back in the pot and it was allocated to a project. So we're in that position again now. And that sheet I've given you shows you the FY24 through FY27. The green line at the bottom is the funding we've been allocated for FY27 via federal highways and the VDOT allocation formula. And you can see the total on the right-hand side is the amount of funding we get each year to fund FAMPO. That pays the rent for this building. It pays for our overhead costs, printing, computers, all that, pays staff salaries and benefits, and all our running costs, right? So you can see what happens is that it slowly goes up, and that accounts for inflation. So if inflation runs between 2.5% and 3%, I need 2.5% to 3% more money every year to just break even. So when it drops like that, it creates a funding hole because not only does it not level funding, losing the 3% inflation, but it's actually dropping. So if I were to have gotten a 3% increase on the PL funding, it would have taken it to $594,490, which is about $17,315 more than what we were allocated. I don't know how final the number is, but it looks pretty final. We get told that's your number, and there's not unlikely to be a change until after this financial year ends. So there's a small chance in July that we'll come back and say, you've got revised advice from federal highways, and we have changed the numbers. If the TAC and policy committee decides to make good on the shortfall, I'll make the same commitment I did last time, that if we get revised figures, we'll put the money back in the pot, and then you can still allocate it to the project. But if we don't, we do need funding to fund the administration, to fund the rent and the computers and the staff salaries and all the other overheads that we have. So I just bring that into this equation. If the TAC is so inclined, you can fund it without impacting any of those numbers there, because the one number that isn't there is that reserve that we set aside. We haven't spent a cent of it. We almost never spend it. We always put that 5% reserve. So the reserve for FY26 still exists. And that money, what we typically do is if we don't spend it, which is almost every year, we put it back in the pot for the next cycle. And then we take out on the front end FY27 and we create a new reserve for FY27. So that money doesn't actually affect anybody's projects or anybody's allocations. It's an emergency fund that we keep for special need. We'd potentially be able to fund it out of there if the policy committee were to agree, or if the TAC recommends it, but it's not our money. It's money that is in the STGB CMAC CR funding pot. I just pointed out to you now because this is probably the best time to talk about it. I don't like raising these issues, so most years I don't do it. If our funding is square, I just don't say anything.
Sure. So Ian, how much are you requesting?
So If we put a roughly 3% increase, if my math is good, it's $17,315.26. I don't know if that's,
17 of the two.
sorry.
I'll get you back to
Sorry.
where you were, like 26, but
Sorry, yes, plus 3%.
I mean, wouldn't it be something more like 34,000?
Yeah, sorry. I take it back. I was just talking about the difference.
But it would just be on the federal, or no, it would be federal.
No, it would be, well,
Plus state.
yeah,
So you want the total to be something like 594
yes.
instead of 560?
Yes, I want the total to be $594,490 if you need an exact number.
What's the exact number you?
Um. Fine,
594 for 9057.
I'll put you down just 1 second. 60. So the total amount I need is 34,423, but a 10% of that is local match, am I right?
Well, I think.
Or did we already? Okay, so
Probably would need the.
I need $34,423. I'll give you back the 62 cents.
That's generous.
That's generous. I'm just teasing.
Well, I'll say I don't have an issue with basically recommending that FAMPO have that additional STBG funding for next year to kind of cover this a likely shortfall. I don't know what other.
I'm the same, but we need to fund operations and that's just what should happen.
Can we ask for a recommendation from the TAC to the policy committee? I mean, they could still vote no.
I'll make a recommendation that basically $34,423 is set aside in STBG fund to cover a potential shortfall based on PL funding for the FAMPO staff for next fiscal year.
And then, as I said, if it gets increased, we will just reallocate the money back into the STGB pot.
All right, all in favor? Any opposed? All right.
Thank you. We appreciate the support.
All right. Do we have any more discussion on the CMAQ, CR, SCBG funding?
So I just have one question, with regard just to what the budgets are. Are you sure what those are at this point?
These amounts, we've been given the final number, so these numbers are what we've.
Thing draft on them, but typically at this point in time of the year, we're pretty confident we can move forward.
Okay.
They usually only come back for an amendment once a year. So when they give you next year's money, then they can take some money back again.
Yeah, I'll take everything across 6 years again.
They don't buys it during the just once a year come back to us. So that this is what we've been asked to program.
Just to wrap up, and then the FAMPO staff, you'll reach out to us in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm going to plug the CMAQ STDG basically this week to get a good idea. I'll run the numbers for the FY 27 through 30 to kind of give an idea of the rates. And I'm going to probably say, okay, here's how the 31, 32 allocations based on your applications. And now here's your near-term budget. What do you want to move around using your near-term dollars to accelerate? And then that'll free up the FY 31, 32 dollars. And I'm assuming that basically every single applicant jurisdiction has something where they have, and the remainder funds go into that. And I'm going to assume that's probably what's going to happen, but I'm going to work for y'all first before I develop this sheet.
Great, thanks.
John, can you go back to the sheet where you had all the money broke down?
Sure. Here,
All
the way back.
It was all of them. Yeah, that one.
Mhm.
So that's using the 2 years, 31 and 32.
Yes.
There will be slight changes to these numbers when put in those set asides and there's like a remainder from the, I'm talking now about those projects that the policy committee have asked for.
Those are program for FY 27, so it's not gonna impact.
So not gonna
That's
actually.
the reason why I kind of too, because
That's correct.
there's gonna be more movement near term.
That's correct. It won't affect these numbers.
And John, those are the set asides, the top 4 or 5, based on what we said in the policy.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Those are the expected sense, so it's,
And do we have those monies programmed or where they're going? Yeah, we do. Okay.
Okay. Any other comments, discussion? All right. Feel like we probably hit PL funding pretty well there. So move into smart scale regional projects pre-application updates.
The announcement that, the application for. Thank you.
Great job.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yes. Involved for an unprecedented amount of communication, everybody got things moving as they could, and
April Policy Committee meeting will be held at a special location and time. I believe that's on April 20th at 6:30 at the Spotsylvania Government Merchant Square Building, room 1 on the 3rd floor. Is there any other comment about that?
Yes.
So I just have one question. This is the CTB meeting still scheduled for that, or is that still maybe gonna on a different day? Latest.
It's gonna be at 6 o'clock that night. We're gonna be, first to speak, and then we'll drive over.
We turned in all of our smart scale.
Yes.
That is good.
You know, I just asked about the CTB meeting on April 20th.
Yes.
And the policy committee.
So the decision was taken to shift the policy committee meeting 30 minutes later, still in Spotsylvania as agreed, but it won't be 6 p.m. anymore, it'll be 6:30 p.m. And that's to accommodate for the spring public hearings of the CTB on the 6-year improvement plan. Normally we get about 2 months notice. We usually get a written email from VDOT to say it's coming up at this date or whatever. We're the first region to have the spring hearings this cycle, so there wasn't this 2 months of notice. So we've had to scramble around to try and accommodate both meetings on the same night. So because the spring meeting starts at 4 or so p.m., it makes sense for policy committee members to go there first and speak if they wish to make any representations or comments, and then to leave in time to drive to Pennsylvania's courthouse area to go and attend the policy committee meeting. And because of that, we've just shifted the meeting 30 minutes later, give them extra time to travel and make arrangements and so on. So the policy committee members who attend may not stay to the very last public comment, but they will be there for the majority of the meeting if they're able to attend. And then the policy committee meeting will be 30 minutes later than usual. If the public comments finish before the time they need to depart, of course, they'll be there for both meetings in full. This is just to try and accommodate that double booking of those. We couldn't do much about it. The CTB will be in town for that week. The following day, the 21st, they have their workshop and they're meeting in Fredericksburg. And then they go into their, what do they call the other meeting, their official board meeting, where they action meeting where they vote for things that are on the agenda. So they will be in town for 3 days, and Ms. Laura Sellers, us, the CTB member from our region, is working together with the city and other people to facilitate all the arrangements for all of that. And they've booked the Jepson Hall, beg your pardon, for the CTB public hearings on the afternoon of the 20th. So if anybody wishes to attend the public hearings on the 6-year improvement plan, 4 p.m. at the Jepson Hall, and it's a public meeting, so you're able to register to give public comments. Usually, VDOT at the door has like a little sign-up sheet, and if you wish to speak, you usually have to sign up at the information desk before the meeting so that the chairman has got a list of names as to who wishes to speak in the meeting.
All right, thank you. Next we have item 10, updates from agencies and localities. We start with the Route 1 Arterial Management Plan.
All right, so we just had the kickoff on Thursday. This past Thursday, so we're going to be doing management and study. That one help with a lot of the developments that are coming in off of Route 1 within Spotsylvania County especially, and then also now in Caroline County, which is a lot of them. On Arterial Preservation Network has an extra step, trying to get a traffic signal in for like an intersection for like a new development. There's an extra step to it. So the Innovative Intersection Committee noticed that they were getting a lot more of these SJR requests, and so they asked the district. We were going to try and push this till after Smart Scale, so like December, to have like a better present, January, February, March, start finding out what's probably going to be funded through Smart Scale. So we were trying to push off starting the study a little later so that we could incorporate that better into the study. We have decided basically as a group to start a little bit earlier, just because we are getting a lot of these private developments coming in that are asking for signalized intersections. There might be other ways to kind of help out with those impacts to the developments, and kind of step forward of what needs to be done on Route 1, then we can use for these developments when they're coming in. So it's not just each one coming in separately, and we can kind of look at it as an entire, network instead of just individual.
And the 207 one?
So the 207 one, we did submit that area for a STAR study for this upcoming round. So we submit these to TNPD. TNPD does look at the list that we submit, but they also look at basically all the need out there. They're going to be looking at the priority needs for the district as well. So they will sometimes come back with other locations as well that we get to choose from. For this one, we're looking at it from Welcome Way to, after talking to Liam, to Enterprise Parkway. Because so what happens between like the Church Loop that now that 107 Enterprise Parkway is you get this backup going eastbound or no westbound. You get backup going west. That sometimes is backing up past you are getting this backup on 207, and it will be random. Usually there's not like an issue for 95 or even Route 1 that stuff is actually barred. Is usually backing up there because we do have a significant amount of trucks that are using this segment of roadway to get to 95. And then we also have the issue at the 207 ramps for 95, especially going southbound, that you have a bit more of a curve there. So we do have trucks that are tipping over for people that are exiting off of 95, or for the trucks that are trying to get on. We are having trucks tip over there, so we're just trying to basically
throughout this entire area. We know of other developments that are going in that will actually be expanding the truck parking capacity here, which means that we will have more trucks coming on this intersection. So trying to get ahead of some of those issues and deal with some of. Hopefully, we can.
Cassie, would these basically two studies be the?
I mean, like, be the. Just especially for stars. I mean, this past round, we had 6 of them. I don't know if every round we're going to have 6 star studies. If they try and keep it around 4, we got lucky because Hampton Roads actually didn't submit any until late in the game. Yes. But they didn't submit any for stars until late in the game. So we were able to get an extra couple of studies because of that. So, and then we would also have pipeline. We're still going to have pipeline for next round. This round we did have 7. We most likely will not have 7 next round. It just kind of depends. It's usually between 5 and 6 for pipeline as well. But so these will not be the only 2 studies. And route 1 is like a separate as the meeting and everything that we went over on Thursday. This is a little bit longer, but it will be for the timeline trying to get those finished for the next round.
Yeah.
All right, we're not quite to 11, so if we have any other updates from agencies and localities anyone would like to share, I'd like to open up the floor for that.
I can share. We have our surveys on the train, our customer satisfaction surveys on April 22nd. So if you see us having trains, that's what we're doing. We've also kicked up the Meet the Managements again. We had LaFont last Wednesday. We'll be at Union Station next Wednesday. So we're handing out goodies and treats and very gear. So if you're riding our trains, make sure to stop at our tables.
So Will, one question with surveys is the survey that was originally going to be like last October 1st, is that going to be rescheduled?
That
until next year
is just going to be that's just going to happen again in October. We're using the same data from the previous year.
Okay.
For last year's that we didn't do.
I can give a quick update. I think some of you know that GWRC has been working on a methodology for allocating Manful Alliance funding. So GWRC is a member of the Manful Alliance, which is a partnership between GWRC, PRTPT, MVP, CRPT. And basically we pay Manfuls to submit data to us that we submit to the National Transportation. That generates capital funding every year, about $1 million a year comes back to that. And so we've been working with the GWRC board to adopt a policy and a methodology for distributing those funds across our transit agencies. So we have the policy up for a vote at the end of this month, but we've gone ahead and kicked off our first call for progress. So VRE, PRTC, and Fredericksburg have gotten. So we're just really excited to have that process off the ground. Our plan is to do an annual call.
Just a couple of votes of thanks of staff. So thank you to Carrie for all the work on the smart scale. It was a heavy lift and it's stressful. Thanks to VDOT for the assistance on your side for our projects. We had to get all sorts of things to the localities for doing the work on the individual projects to get us study documents, maps, and everything else. Then to the rest of the FAMPO staff, this agenda was 227 pages. It was huge. And there's some big meaty items in here that we, because of time constraints, had to do them all at the same time. And I just want to thank the FAMPO staff for all the work. John had the heaviest lift on this agenda.
Smart scale.
But overall, of those 100 pages John physically typed himself. So thanks to that, thanks to Becky for working on the UPWP and Eugene for doing a great job on the survey. We got well over 1,000 responses, and that's a really good, if you know what responses you get on like a pipeline study or whatever else, 1,000 plus is a great result. So well done to that, and well done to Lida, who's chugging away on the complete streets plan. The staff did a heavy lift. One final thing, also a word of thanks. About a week ago, I was officially made a permanent resident of these United States. A green card, that's what it looks like. So I keep it in my wallet in case some ICE person knocks on my door, and I can just wave the card. But FAMPO and GWRC did support my application, so thanks very much for supporting me in this endeavor to not be deported at a moment's notice. So thanks.
How long did it take, Ian, to process?
Oh dear.
Yeah. Oh,
As long as I've been working.
oh, is it? Okay. Wow.
So the next step will be citizenship, but I have to wait because I can only be granted citizenship 5 years from 2 Tuesdays ago. So
Okay.
it's another very long wait. But anyway, we're heading there.
Yeah.
Just want to be sure about it. I said, we just want to be sure about it.
All right, with that, our next meeting is May 4th at 9:30, and today's meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everybody here.
Thank you.